Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. I've bought a new toy, but I'm hoping that this toy is going to be a bit of a game changer. If you don't know what it is, it's a spot welder. It's a handheld spot welder, and I bought it totally blind from a timed auction of an engineering company that was local, that were closing down. And I thought, well, if I can get this for a decent price, it's worth a punt. The company's been going a fairly long time, about 60 odd years I think. They finally shut down. I think they may have sold the premises for building. Usual sort of story. And they had anything and everything to do with engineering, and it was an absolute treasure trove of a place. Tons and tons of stuff. Car lifts and loads of welders, MIG, TIG, plasma cutters, arc welders, you name it, they had it. Bending machines, I mean huge, massive bending machines, not ones you can put in your garage. You know, slip rollers, you know, that are 10, 20 feet long, that sort of stuff. But in the lots was this little contraption here. And I've been looking at one of these, getting one of these for quite a while, because behind you is the ubiquitous Mini that has got a new floor pan waiting to go in, and hours and hours and hours of welding ahead to get the thing back on the road. Hours of welding just to get it on its wheels. But yeah, there's tons of welding, and I'm not a very good welder. I know I'm not a good welder. You know, my father was a welder. He taught me what I know. Learnt a bit at college. But to be a good welder, you got to do it all the time. You got to practice. It's like anything. To be good at anything, unless you're super talented, you've got to practice. And my interest wasn't in welding. My father was a welder. He did welding all day, 30 odd years, nearly 40 years for a job. And he could weld fog, basically. But I'm not that good, and I know my limits. When I bought the Mini, I knew I needed a decent welder. I had gas oxyacetylene for gas welding, thin sheet, and I had an arc welder, both inherited from my dad. But I didn't have a decent MIG machine, and I wanted to spend some decent money on a decent MIG, and I bought a Sealy Super MIG 180. And this is more than man enough to do what I need to do on the Mini. And it will do thicker steel as well, which I also sometimes do. Stick things together. You probably saw the Jimny videos. I built a tow bar with that welder there. That was 4 mil box, I think it was, and it more than coped with that. Usually, rule of thumb to buy a welder, if you want to buy a welder, buy something bigger than you need, because if you buy something that is only just on the limit, you could be basically, you know, you're selling yourself short, really. But anyway, I'm rambling about a MIG. I'm here to talk about my spot welder. But the point is that the MIG, to plug weld with the MIG, which is effectively a substitute for spot welding, is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. You've got to drill the holes to accept the plug weld. You've then got to go around and plug, and you run the risk of melting your metal if you're not there, and it's just very laborious and time consuming. So what I've got here is, and I've never heard of them, it is a Portable Welders Limited, Bicester in Oxfordshire, and PW Welding they're called now. And basically that's what they do. They do spot welders. They do all sorts of spot welders. And I've never heard of the company before, but it's quite a big company. They make some pretty high-tech kit for fabrication industries, for spot welding, pressure welding, whatever, friction welding. I'm not quite sure exactly the extent of their range, but this is where it was from. It's English, it's British, no idea of age. So the data plate is telling us that it is a 240 volt single phase, and it takes about maximum current, mains current is 20 amps. And I think that turns the current from 20 amps with the windings inside the unit up to something round about 8,500 amps, if I'm correct in reading that. So it's a pretty hefty bit of kit that is converting your mains voltage and your mains current into a lot of amps to give you the heat that you need at the tips to make the spot weld. Now it also came with a couple of accessories. Now it came in its big box, which is very useful to store it in. It's got lots of spare tips that came with it, and it's got some long arms, and it's got a cranked arm as well for getting into awkward spaces, and long arms for getting down long runs of weld where you can't actually get close up to the weld that you want to do. And those on their own are hugely expensive to buy. Not only that, it also came with a hanging frame. So this thing here, it basically bolts to this, and you suspend it from something like a crane or a hoist, so that you don't have to hold the welder all the time, and effectively takes all the weight of the welder, so you're not holding onto it for 8 hours on end, and you can then concentrate on pressing the handle down to give you your weld without having to concentrate on holding the thing in the air at the same time. So that's also very useful. So on the face of it, big box, tips, selection of length arms and shaped arms, cradle, and the actual unit itself. But this is a very much buyer beware video. I bought this completely blind on a timed auction, so I hadn't even looked at it or seen it. I could only see it on a screen. When I got it home, I was all excited, and I plugged it in straight away, started doing some welding to see what would happen. And within about 5 minutes, it started to smoke. And the smoke was pouring out of this sort of chamber here. If you can just look down here, these are the strips of metal which carry the current from the transformer out to the tips through this frame and to the tip, and there's a similar underneath as well. And it was smoking from in there, and if you can, well, you can't smell it, but I can smell it. If I get up close, I can smell electrical burning. So that wasn't good. But what I did notice, that as soon as I plugged it in, it started buzzing, and it shouldn't do that. It should only buzz when you actually make the tips at the end of the unit. So what was happening was, as soon as I plugged it into the wall, it came on immediately. In other words, it was connected straight away, and it was buzzing and creating current that had nowhere to go. Effectively, the current could go nowhere because it was being created inside the transformer, and everything got very, very hot. It got so hot, in fact, I couldn't actually touch any of it. It got so hot, and I thought, well, that's the money wasted, because I thought the whole thing was toast, basically. Now, these things cost upwards of £400–500 second hand. Just this bit, with standard tips, not with the frame, not with the box, with the bits in it. We're looking at, probably, to buy that brand new, you're probably looking at 1,500, maybe more. I got this with all of that gear for 250 quid plus fees, which pushed it up to just over £320, I think it was. So I got a unit for just over 300 quid, which has got all that kit with it. And you can imagine that when it started smoking, I thought, I've just wasted 320 quid. So what did I do? Well, of course, I stripped it down, didn't I? I thought, I'm not going to give in too easily, and let's have a look and see what may have gone wrong, because there's very little that can go wrong. Your mains is in, it goes to a coil of copper wire, that creates or induces current into another coil, which increases the current to come out the tips. That's all there is. There's 2 windings. It was as simple as that. I took the whole thing to pieces. This is where all the windings are. Can't get that apart. It's all laminated steel, which is all bonded together, and it was basically, you know, that is solid. You can't take that apart. That is as it is. I took the end off of both ends, and interestingly, what I found was that the live wire was permanently connected to the coil of the primary coil, so that as soon as you plugged it in the wall, it was powering and energizing the primary coil, which is not correct. What should happen is, this is the handle for it, okay? Now what should happen is, You plug it in and nothing's happening at all. It's quiet, no current is flowing. You offer it up to your work and then you squeeze down your handle, and when you do that, this switch here, which is mounted inside the handle, this switch basically completes the circuit to the coil, sets it going, and therefore it starts buzzing, and you give it a bit more pressure and you hold it for a prescribed amount of seconds to allow the tips of the welder to melt the steel that you want to weld, and then you let go. And as soon as you let go, the switch stops making, it opens, and everything switches off. And you've got your weld. And then you just repeat and repeat. And then you have so many minutes that you can do that for before the thing starts to heat up, and then you give it a rest. That's how you use a manual spot welder. But absolutely no way should it run as soon as you plug it in. Now, what I found was this switch was not connected into the circuit at all. It was actually connected to the secondary live, which is in the cable, down to earth. Not only that, the switch is actually faulty, it doesn't work. So if you put a meter on it, it's permanently made. It's not on and off, it's permanently on all the time. I've got a new switch, that's this one here. You can hear that clicking, and I'm going to wire it, the live coming in from the plug, and then the live going out to the transformer. Now, before I go any further, I hasten to add, I did not plug this in until I'd checked the insulation. I needed to make sure that the mains was isolated from the body, because otherwise, if that had been energized with mains and you picked it up, it would have given you an awfully big electric shock. So we checked that immediately, because there was no way I was going to plug this in completely blind and totally unknown. There's no way I was going to plug it into the mains to see if it worked without checking that the body was insulated from the mains. Now, I've got my multimeter set onto ohms, onto the plug, and if I go onto the body, you can see on the meter I've got infinite resistance, so high resistance. If I go onto there, that is where the wire is coming in from the plug, and you can see there I've got 0.8 of an ohm, so that is directly down to the plug. And if I go to the other side, should be zero, or sorry, should be infinite resistance. So I'm happy that the whole thing from the main side is insulated from the body. The second thing was to put the crocodile clip on the tip, and if I check my multimeter, we've got 0.2 of an ohm. If we go the other side of the coil, exactly the same. Okay, so that is your resistance that's in the secondary coil. It's messing around because I'm not holding it on tightly enough. 0.2 of an ohm. Just tin a bit of solder onto the ends of these cables, and the terminals we want, there's a picture on the back of the switch. We've got the common terminal, which is the bottom one, and then we've got the normally closed and the normally open, and we want normally open so that when we use the handle, that contact is then closed and makes the circuit from the common through the switch and out to the primary winding. We don't need the top one, we need the second one down and the bottom one. This is a fiddly little job. That's looking good. Simple as that. All done. Just got to nip off that unused terminal because that would be live, of course. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some heat shrink over that, because if I nip that, I might break the switch. There we go. Little bit of soot, never hurting anybody. Well, maybe that's not true, but anyway, that's it. All we've got to do now is connect it into the handle and try it. I have to confess that many months have passed since I last touched my spot welder. So I now think it's about time I actually got the whole thing back together. She's all wired in with the switch on the handle, which is now no longer permanent switch as it was before, and I've just got to get the insulator plate
onto the top of the body between that and the handle, screw that down. Same time I've got to screw the handle in at the front, but also I have to thread in the spring. So the spring basically gives a little bit of an override on the handle when you're using the machine. And what the spring's designed to do is it just gives you a little bit of feel as you clamp the piece of metal that you want to weld. And I've just got to get it threaded into the back of the handle here. That's all it does. Once I get it started on my arm. That should, as we go through, that should just bring that forwards. Yeah, that's took now. So I need to screw that a lot further out yet, because I've got to get the bolts lined up. There we go, now it's in. Right, now the next tiny little bit of a problem is getting the wires in without trapping them. Yeah, we're down. That one's done up. Right, so if we just adjust the what we can do with this, basically adjust depending on the tips we have in the end of the probes there. We need to adjust it so that as we clamp it down, they touch. So they're meeting, they're touching here, but no current will flow because it's not until I actually push a little harder yeah, there we go. So they meet, and then as you clamp it with your hand, it switches it on and off we go with the current. So if they're touching, nothing's going to happen until we actually squeeze it with the handle. I suppose now we ought to try it. Right, I'm actually going to give this a go. One of these little hooks has broken off this iron rack that we use to hold our iron on the wall, and the hook's broken because it was spot welded when it was first made, and just cleaned it all off, got rid of the paint on the other side as well, and I'm going to give it a go with the spot welder to see if it actually works. So let's try it. Bit of paint burning. That looked quite promising. Whether that's worked or not, I don't know. I'm just only going to hold a cable. I'm going to give it another one just to be sure. Well, that looks like that's worked. Now clearly that's not going to be structural, so I'm not going to pull on that because that's fixed that. I don't want to take that off again. So that's worked that bit. It just needs a bit of white paint on it. And that will hold the cable that I need. That's all good. So that works for that. But is it good enough for structural metal work? That's what we need to know. Let me find some steel. Right, let's see what happens. Well, it looks all right. Should we see if it's got any strength? It's got strength. She's done. It works. That is a brilliant result. Can't get that apart, which of course is the whole point. If I destroy it, needs a little bit longer, but that is getting better. You have to be a bit careful you don't overdo it, otherwise you can't get the electrodes off the metal. But that, 3 spot welds in a row, yeah, I know they're close together, but that looks like that is done. There we go. Well happy. Don't know if you can see the state of the electrode there. It's getting hot. It's starting to melt. I suppose they're going to have to be dressed a little bit because that's flattening out. I've got a number of different electrodes that I can use in there, so I'm not touching them because they're not. I've got a number of different electrodes I can use in there. I probably need to dress those up a little bit. Right, so I've just dressed the ends of the electrodes and I'm just going to loosen them off so I can turn them a bit. You can turn them to get them to meet up better. There we go. They're actually better. That might concentrate the weld now a little bit better because I've dressed them up so they're a bit more of a point. And let me find another piece of steel that I can use. Right, let's have another go. Let's clamp them together. They've got every chance. Right, let's give it another go. Don't know if you can see inside there, but that's penetrated in there very well. I think if I worked it backwards and forwards, it would probably come off. In fact, no. The metal has broken before the weld. There's that bit still on the end, look, and that bit has busted off. I'm well pleased, well pleased. So it's going to take a bit of getting used to use it, but it does appear to work, and cleanliness is everything, as in most things. Cleaner the metal, the better connection you're going to have between the electrodes, so the better heat transfer, the better, more current you're going to get transferring across, more heat. More heat means you're going to weld it. It's actually going to melt the metal together and it's going to be a good spot weld. Happy, happy days. Not bad. Not bad at all. Considering I bought this off an auction site, sold unseen. Excellent. Well, that was a good buy. 320 quid I think it was. Can't remember now. It's so many months ago. It's now November. I've just been stood here waiting for the fireworks to stop so I can do some videoing. I was just about to sign off and off the village fireworks started. So here we are. The spot welder is working. We can get good penetration weld. We just got to get used to using it. And as you can see in the background, here is my mini floor. Here is the Mini behind me. At the moment, the whole garage, the whole workshop is a total mess because I've been so busy with lots and lots of other things happening this summer. I've got to spend some time getting everything tidy, putting everything back where it should be, and then we can get on and use the spot welder on the Mini. And the plan for this winter is to get this floor into this shell. And if I do that, I'll be very happy. Big job, but I've got to get it done. I've got to get it done. It's just it's the job of the winter. It's got to be done. I've got to fit it in around all the other stuff I do, but it's got to happen. So If you're not subscribed already, please consider doing so, because that will help us. We've got the Mini coming up. We've got all the other stuff that goes on as well. We've got tractors and cars, as you probably know if you're already subscribed. And if you're not, subscribe so you can keep up with what we're doing. And share to your friends if you've got minis, if you've got other things, Capris. You know, the Capri is on the channel. If you're doing a mini restoration, this might be of use to you to sort of follow along what we're doing. But it'd be great if you came along with us and if you've got any comments, can help us through it, and please make a comment. But above all, put a subscription down. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it helps the channel no end. So I'm going to go and get on with tidying up the garage and doing a couple of other things before winter really sets in, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, and bye for now.